Perfect. Well, welcome everyone to the VSERVE Ebusiness Solution podcast on supply chain management, where we invite some of the industry's great experts to share their experiences and gather some helpful tips along the way. And I'm Cynthia, your host. Today, we are diving deep in the world of global logistics. We are doing operational transformation, and our guest today is someone who has truly seen it all from the warehouse floor to the executive boardroom. So give me a minute to, give him a quick, good introduction about the powerhouse of supply chain industry. You have an experience of 24 years. He has managed massive 1.6 million square foot distribution networks, overseen 300 million global, capital portfolios. He have held executive leadership roles at companies, like Capri's, A&P, and today you are a managing partner of the Eightfold Path Consulting. Um, Please help me in welcoming JuJuan Timberlake. I hope I'm saying that right. It's the pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And we're so excited to hear from you. And my first question is always is like, how did you end up in supply chain? What is the journey? We would love to hear everything from the beginning till now.
Okay. So, again, my name is JuJuan Timberlake, and thank you for having me. I, I like to tell people I was born an engineer. So, from playing with Legos all the way through high school, where I had opportunity to work for NASA for 7 years during high school and college, one for an electrical engineer, 4 years for a mechanical engineer, and then 2 years for a computer engineer. Uh, my brain is wired to solve problems. So I thoroughly enjoyed engineering, so much so that I went to Morehouse College, got a mathematics degree, and then went to the Georgia Institute of Technology to and received a mechanical engineering degree. As far as my journey within supply chain, coming out of school, I spent a year in a mechanical, electrical, plumbing design firm. Realized I didn't want to be a professional engineer. Not to say
Mhm.
there's anything wrong with it, but making the drawings and doing that type of engineering wasn't necessarily my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to join Kurt Salmon Associates, which was now part of Accenture. And then there's where I cut my teeth in supply chain and really did everything from engineer time studies, looking at the distribution network a second at a time by looking at activities on the floor, all the way through total network design of large distribution and transportation logistic network. Um, from there, I wanted to get off the road, so to speak, and so I started Smart and Final's engineering department and did everything within Smart and Final that I did at Kurt Salmon. Essentially, network design, engineer time studies, help
Wow.
the warehouse management system providers build their labor management module within their WMS. They did a lot of category management work as well. From there, I went to A&P, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, and managed distribution as well as industrial engineering, and eventually distribution, transportation, computer generated ordering, project management, and demand planning for A&P. And then I had an opportunity to shift careers and get into more of the retail space and joining Michael Kors at the time before they became Capri Holdings.
Mhm.
And there, I spent 5 years as someone who started their strategy department and ran their corporate PMO. And then I spent another 4 years managing North America distribution, uh, which was, as you mentioned, 1.6 million square feet of distribution space between facilities in Whittier, Teterboro, and Montreal. And from there, I started my own consulting practice, Eightfold Path Consulting, in which I've tried to take all of my experiences over my 20 plus year career and provide those services to clients.
Wow. I mean, that's like it took you like 10 minutes just to explain that. Imagine the experiences you've had over the years. I'm so excited. I'm gonna start with like my favorite question is you've seen so many different leaderships, right, over the years, all the way from your high school experiences to now, you being one of the leaders. What design or high performing like organizations have changed you over the years? Like, where did you learn the most, I guess, that shaped you as a person?
Uh, I think every moment has a lesson. And
Hmm.
so I can remember lessons where I may have been frustrated in my career because I truly understood the math and I truly understood how to solve the problem. Um, and I remember someone pulling me aside and saying, "Hey, throughout your career, the answer may be easier for you to obtain,
Hmm.
just because that's the way your mind works. But you have to spend your time really making ideas sustainable, which means having the people that you're trying to implement this idea with really own the idea. And sustainability is measured when you leave, is it still happening? And so I look throughout my career and all these moments where it shifted me from just solving problems to really building cultures and being the stewards and the servant leader of people that I was responsible for, to make sure that their success uh, was obtained based on how they defined it, along with obtaining the success within the parameters of whatever business I was in at the time.
Wow. And when we talk about supply chain, obviously distribution has been a big part of what you're doing. What makes it different, right? When you're running with distribution organizations and talking to the executive decision makers, how do you bridge that gap? Because obviously there's a huge gap there. So how do you bridge those gaps in your leadership style, I guess?
So when talking to the executives, I tried to make sure that we looked at all the data. The data was essentially the driver for every decision, and data itself was a data point. But other data points may be, what's the impact on culture, what's the impact on capital, what's the impact on the consumer, whether that's the internal customer or the external customer. So the more I spoke with the executives is really trying to find the balance of implementing the best solution, both from a business perspective and a cultural perspective, to make sure we bridge any gaps and really suggested what we could deliver. When
Mhm.
working with the associate on the floor, and working throughout the supply chain, uh, for me, the biggest thing is having them understand that we all have a role. And my role may be to run this particular part of the supply chain, and their role may be to drive a forklift, and they've been doing it for 30 plus years. And if I respected the fact that they were an expert in their role, uh, and under and uh, really explain to them that if they fulfill their obligation of their role 100%, and I did the same, regardless if our roles were different, we both had a great day. So
Yeah.
it's really trying to find ways at the executive level, or whether it's the associate on the floor, connecting with them, because we're all just human beings, just trying to do the best we can for that day, and make it home to the people and the things that we love.
Wow. And I know you're a firm believer, when it comes to high performing teams, that they aren't just built on automation or P&L. Like it's the trust you build, the servant leadership is I think the term you've coined that we've learned about. Can you tell me a little bit more about, that aspect? Like how does servant leadership practically like, show up, I guess, when you're doing, floors to executives? Like how does that work out?
So part of servant leadership is doing what I call a needs assessment, meaning I have to understand your need before you can understand mine.
Hmm.
So whether it's as simple as, if I am hungry but you can't breathe, I need to make sure that you can breathe before we can eat. Just to
Yeah.
just to make it as plain as possible. So for me, I really need to understand whether it's my stakeholders in the corporate environment or the associates on the floor, the people that are managing those associates, what those
Mhm.
needs are. And then from there, I can understand how to essentially fulfill those needs at the same time direct the organization to fulfilling the need of the larger organization or the goal of the larger the larger framework of the company. And
Mhm.
so really it starts at at the needs assessment. Then it starts with being empathetic and understanding that each individual situation, the way you handle it, may set a
Mhm.
precedent for every situation after that. So really approaching every problem issue empirically and making sure you make the best decision that's really going to support the team in the long run while making sure those individual needs are fulfilled.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure with your consulting job, you work with, many different industries as well. Do you see that there is a strategy shift when, you're looking at different distribution centers? Or is it like, generic, there is a framework that you follow and you go about it?
So it's a little bit of both. I think there are always going to be wholesale retail e-commerce channels, especially in the retail space, depending on whether you're a big box appliance or potentially garment, grocery, what have you, you're going to be in one of those three spaces. And uh, the physical framework for the most part is going to be relatively the same. Now, you may have automation within that framework, whether it's a distribution center, transportation, etc. But the
Hmm.
physical framework is going to be the same. I think with the insertion of AI over the last several years, how you do some of your strategy work, whether it's network strategy design or just internal customer service processes, whether you're using chatbots, different things along those lines. There are
Yeah.
ways in which you can really streamline the efforts of the work that's involved and really focus people that are doing those efforts more on the troubleshooting, the problem solving, the evolution of the business versus just the blocking and tackling of the day, making sure that things get done and really not being able to have preview of everything. Now you
Hmm.
can have really oversight of everything in your responsibilities, and that leaves people more opportunity to see what other problems they can solve.
Definitely. And especially with the AI, like the way we are collecting data now, we're researching the analytics. Have you seen it influence your decision making, especially when it comes to large scale distribution over the years?
Oh, absolutely. I think AI maybe over the last 2 years has really been in place, and is changing exponentially almost daily, if not weekly.
Hmm.
So what I am seeing is that the people that can uh, adapt to this new way of gathering information, just the same way they went from encyclopedias to Google changed the world. Now AI, uh, I am actually having conversations with the AI to make sure I get the right answer that I need. I think
Hmm.
there are always going to be people that are required, because even in me writing proposals, it'll
Yep.
say something that's not quite right based on my
Yeah.
experience. And as soon as I say, hey, what about this aspect?
Hmm.
And it's so funny, the AI will say, well, you're absolutely right. Didn't think of that. And it'll give me some other answer. So
Yeah.
I do think there is definitely a change management uh, organizational change management opportunity for everyone to really figure out the best ways to adopt AI within their organization and really
Yeah.
adapt to um, ways to optimize the processes within the supply chain.
Yeah, and we would love to hear something like, a real world example. You as a consultant, working through this situation when it comes to AI, are companies willing to kind of like, include it into their daily operation? What's the pushback like? I would love to hear it in an example though.
So I think I mean personally I've used AI to write proposals where something would have taken me a few days to a week to process the information, really
Yeah.
understand all the nuances. It's, literally taking 80% of that time away because I
Yep.
can upload all the information and it doesn't give you the answer right away. I remember writing one proposal where I probably went back and rewrote that same proposal like 10 or 12 times because
Yeah.
of the nuances that I knew that necessarily the AI didn't at the time know
Yep.
how things should flow within the framework of this proposal or the work that I wanted to deliver or was actually proposing. So um, again, you're people that leverage AI and the
Mhm.
organizations that really try to uh, adopt AI are going to be ones on the forefront. I think it's really a twofold problem now. It's really
Yeah.
having the people internally that are have the ability to pivot and actually figure
Yeah.
out the best ways to leverage AI within their organizations, and then the change management that's required for the people that need to use the AI to actually expedite some of the things that they're doing or enhance some of the things that they're doing, making sure that you manage them along the change curve,
Yeah.
so that they actually adapt it and can function well with it. But if you can't do
Yeah.
both organizationally, uh, understand how to leverage AI at a management level, and then
Mhm.
really have the associates or the team members adopt it and really push it forward,
Yeah.
most organizations are really going to struggle because again, it's changing the world exponentially,
Yeah. Every
immediately,
day, every minute.
every minute. So
Yep.
you really have to. It's a train you really have to get on if you want to
Yep.
survive over the next couple 3 to 5 years, because other people will get on it. So.
Exactly, exactly. And from your experience, I guess, what separates in terms of distribution, right? Organization that scale successfully and the ones that struggle. What is like your experience tells you that, separate these two entities?
So really, it's really short and long term planning, and it's really
Mhm.
not just being a recipient of the units, the cartons, whatever you're planning on shipping, and recipient of the data in terms of this is what I'm going to ship over this time frame. It's really um, three levels of planning that you have to prepare for. I would say
Mhm.
one is a 3 to 5 year plan because you want to understand where your distribution centers need to be, who your customers need to be, what value added services you need to have, and really be
Mhm.
able to plan for that long horizon because you can't. It doesn't. You can't just pop up a distribution center in a day. You can in about 6 months, potentially,
Yeah.
depending on the size, if not longer. But you really need to understand, based on your lease contracts, all of those things, what your runway looks like. And then there's planning operationally, which is long term, kind of your sales and operation plan, which should be when things are being produced, ordered, etc., all the way up to when they're leaving the factory and when they're supposed to arrive within your distribution network and when they're supposed to leave the port. So you have this long
Mhm.
range but intermediate plan that's more operational, but it helps you plan your capacities day in and day out, and where you're going to your capacities are going to spike based on the physical locations you have. And then there's a sales and operations execution phase in which you're just saying from when it's supposed to land within my network to when it's supposed to actually get to my stores. How
Mhm.
am I going to manage again those inventory curves, the inventory pushes in retail, a lot of what's called pack and hold, meaning I have to flow my goods through my warehouse processing areas in a way that doesn't shut them down, but at the same time, the order may not be ready to ship to the customer. So I need to make sure my pack and hold areas are really optimal as well. So really, you have to look at all three. You have to look at what's my 3 to 5 year horizon in terms of sales, in terms of units, in terms of location, geographically around the world, and then how they're going to flow from ideation, creation of that product all the way through to my four-wall DC, and then how from the DC they're going to flow all the way through to the customer and back eventually
Yeah.
from a reverse logistics standpoint.
Exactly. So that's obviously a lot of, different points, but what is that one advice that you would give, business leaders today They're aiming to modernize their distribution centers, but also trying to preserve the culture and the trust of their current clients. So how would you what would that one advice be out of all of these points?
Really, to make sure if you're a distribution owner within a company, make sure that you have connections across all of the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning the supply chain should be big S, big C, meaning you should be connected to your production teams, your sales teams, and have a full holistic view of the plans, again, for those three phases and building those relationships. If you are a recipient of that information, and you're not a
Mm-hmm.
participant within understanding the information and providing feedback in terms of what plans they may have may disrupt the distribution center and eventually disrupt the customer, you will eventually have more headaches than you can count. So really, it's aligning what the DC's capabilities are and will be with the leaders within the rest of the organization, so that they understand what the commitments you have and what commitments you can fulfill.
Wow. Okay. Well, another one, now that you've mentioned, complex supply chain transformation, how do you keep, in your experience when managing these kind of complex, transformation, how do you keep teams aligned, across functions, like you mentioned, across geographies? What what should the leaders do to kind of make sure every single team is aligned within this picture?
So part of one of my roles at Capri was not only facilitating global strategy, but was also uh, managing, creating and managing a global project management office. So
Okay.
you actually, it's not you per se, but it's really that global project management office that, starting from the project ideation, whatever it may be, making sure the
Mhm.
stakeholders are aligned on the scope, the time, the budget, et cetera, and making sure that the stakeholders meet regularly, they understand the risks associated with every step of the project, and they're really aligned in terms of how we're spending our time, our dollars, et cetera, to make sure we deliver on the end result. So uh,
Mhm.
in that aspect, whether I manage project management, whether corporately or through a supply chain role. Is really making sure that you have people with an expertise that can not only manage the supply chain, but manage all the partners that participate, that are stakeholders in this project, and anyone that helps to deliver that project, like the IT or any other service provider within the organization, to make sure when what we say good looks like at the finish line, we all agreed along the way.
Hmm. And when it comes to PMOs, really, looking at the global PMOs, um, how do they play a role when it comes to driving that clarity, that accountability across the supply chain, to each of the team members? What role should they play during this time?
They are the pivotal role within the project that really drives and really facilitates the delivery of the result. Without
Mhm.
them, uh, leaders would have to do that themselves and their J job.
Yeah.
So running a supply chain and implementing a new routing software, or running a supply chain, and one of the projects was building a million square foot facility in Europe. You can't do those things as a leader and at the same time deliver on these projects that are outside of the scope. They're part of the building process of what you want to do, in terms of whether it's in e-commerce, whether it's supply chain, etc. You have
Yeah.
to have people who have that expertise of kind of facilitating delivery, or um, herding the cat, so to speak, to make sure
Yeah.
that the project really gets delivered on time, on budget, and within the scope that was defined by all the stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. And most of these scenarios, have you ever kind of, looked at external partners or outsourcing, especially when you're, adding value into terms of distribution or PMO operation in different geographies. Has outsourcing ever helped out in these scenarios?
So there's usually outsourcing at different levels. So if you're looking at operationally, yes, there's always good to have a balance of using outsource temp labor, uh, because especially in retail, you have your huge spikes and shipments in the holiday seasons, depending on which part of the world you are. And so you need to be able to flex people in and out as opposed to having, that labor be within your organization for extended period of times. You have to make
Yeah,
sure you balance that, those new influx of laborers, making sure they're trained, that they mix into the culture well, and they're basically outside of their badge, they're all treated the same. But you do
yeah,
need outsourced labor and that aspect. And then from there, it's really outsourcing based on your capabilities and where you are in your maturity continuum. So
hmm,
if you're a smaller company, if you're just starting out, or if you don't have that level of expertise, you outsource your distribution network to a 3PL. If you're doing network strategy, you would outsource some of the software components of the network strategy to someone that does that, because that may not be your core competency that you want to have in house. Really, the
exactly.
inflection point when you turn in terms of corporate is, do you want to have that expertise, and how often you're going to use that expertise really determines um,
Yeah.
whether or not you outsource and leverage outside providers or not.
Exactly. And I'm pretty sure over the years you've seen so many, when redesigning distribution networks or processes like these, you've seen so many common mistakes that company make that you wish you would have come in and kind of like, stopped or advised them on how to improve. Um, do you have any example of, one such scenario?
So I think there's plenty of examples, but I'll definitely try to pro, protect the folks that and the experiences that I have. But I would say this: one of the sayings I learned is that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
So really, depending on where you are, whether I was in a company that was trying to find its way out of bankruptcy, or companies that were thriving or not thriving, uh, the culture that's created not only within the organization that you run, but the culture that is created for the entire company really will determine the level of innovation, the level of entrepreneurship, the level of productivity, the level of
Yeah.
accountability, all of those things. And so
No.
if leaders aren't defining what those cultures are, um, the culture will be defined by what's accepted
Mm-hmm.
by the leadership team, whether that's
Yeah.
accountability or lack thereof, financial acumen or lack thereof, etc. So really, it comes down to, we organizations have created a culture of accountability and
Mm-hmm.
results, while being servant leaders and empathetic, usually thrive the most, from what I've seen.
Yeah. And what about a success story in the same scenario? What was one of that success stories that you helped in aligning the strategy, the execution, the culture, and it delivered results?
I would say the biggest one for me personally, the most recent one is when I managed supplying, when I managed the 401 distribution for North America for Capri. That was during COVID, and so we had to make some very uh, uh, quick decisions about how we treated our people, how we empathize with them
Yeah.
being uh, working every day. I think we took one day off because we couldn't get masks in time, but
Yeah.
them working every day and understanding that they weren't like corporate associates who had cars or could go into the office in a way that isolated them from other people. Good portion
Yeah.
of the people that worked in the facility had public transportation. So being able to figure out ways to make sure people not only were safe, but they
Mhm.
felt safe. because a lot of times you feeling safe means more than actually being safe. And
Yeah.
so being able to do those things, and even one of the things we're able to do for them as the rest of the company, had a pay reduction, we were able to fight for an incentive for them. So every day they came
Mhm.
in, they got, a fixed amount of money, no matter if you were the most senior person in the facility or the most junior person in the facility. Everyone got the same daily bonus if you came into the facility, and we wanted to
Wow.
make sure that that was the case because we wanted to make sure everyone felt the same, everyone had the same risk, everyone felt the same, and there was
Yeah.
no one that was different than any other person. And me to be able to fight for that, even when the rest of the organization was taking a pay cut, uh, meant a lot. And really just making sure that people felt welcome, important, appreciated, and engaged during a very difficult time in the
Yep.
world. So
Exactly.
that was probably one of the best success stories. I wouldn't say success story. It was the most personally fulfilling for me because I was able to really fulfill everyone's needs in a very difficult time.
Yeah. And businesses are using that time period in COVID to kind of check how they kind of stand as an organization, because there's so many companies that went under, but there are so many companies that survived that and kind of profited during that time as well. And that's only because of the culture, the people, and how they dealt with it. So I completely understand when you say that, with the COVID time, because I've had a lot of people talk about those time periods and how fulfilling it has been to kind of run through that as a leader. But I know we're kind of nearing our time, and I'm loving this conversation. So I will have one more question that I always ask is, looking ahead, maybe 5 years, 10 years as a leader. What would your advice be to the future leaders or future consultants that would want to join a path that you went through, or open their own consulting firm? What would that one advice be for them on how to kind of become what you have become now, or aspired to become?
I would say uh, I would say the best thing is I love consulting. I love the variety it gave me. I love in terms of clients and the problems I solved. I think the biggest thing that helped me was figuring out who I was as a leader. And so
Mhm.
it comes down to really three things: the leadership challenge, model the way, inspire to share vision, enable others to act, challenge the process, encourage the heart. The 4 or 5 agreements: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And the odds principle: there's a line of
Yep.
accountability. Make sure you see it, own it, solve it, do it, whether collectively or individually. And anything below that line is an excuse. So for
Wow.
me, defining how I manage who I am as a person and defining how I approached other people, when I mentioned earlier the needs assessment,
Mhm.
that was probably the most beneficial because I started to understand how I could connect with people empathetically, and then really understand that the best solution implemented and the one that's sustained when you leave. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's not the most mathematically the best, but it's the one that's sustained when you leave. So figuring out all the levels of emotional intelligence. Read as many books as you can, figure out what that looks like, because that's the best way to connect with people. And that's the best way to implement the best result possible within the situation you have.
Wow, that was like the commandments of being a leader. So that was perfect one. It was great talking to you. Thank you so much, for giving us an idea and giving us elements to help us elevate our growth in within the leadership. So any last thoughts that you have before we end the podcast?
Uh, I wouldn't say a thought, but no, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing, not only for your organization, but just the time just to really connect with you and hopefully connect with others. Um, but no, I'm just truly appreciative of my journey, and hopefully this helps anyone else out there.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time. And it was great connecting with you. Thank you again. And give me a minute. I will stop this.